Whenever you get to the end of your sales calls and your prospects are saying it's too expensive, they are not reacting to the price, they're reacting to the lack of distance that's been created between where they are now and where they know they should be. Now, if you've been in sales, you probably heard that a billion times before, but most of the time, people are pretty vague on exactly how to create that distance, build pain, put salt in their wounds to the point where that level of pain actually drives consistent action. And if you don't build this pain properly during your conversations, there is nothing driving them to take action at the end of your calls. Your pitch ends up falling straight on its face, and your prospects end up giving you every single bullshit excuse as to why they can't move forward at the end of your calls. And what happens? You're left chasing a prospect who is likely to never close. And I know all this because I've helped personally generate over $10 million for coaches and agencies, and the framework I'm about to go into great detail in is the exact framework that Curtis Anderton, who's the CEO of Agency Closers, handcrafted by shadowing the man himself, Eddie Malouf. He's the CEO of Bad Marketing for the past 5 years straight, distilling down exactly how he consistently builds that distance and that pain on every single call. That process is the exact process that took Bad Marketing from $400,000 a month to over $2 million a month. And on top of all of that, they were able to simultaneously increase their prices without changing a single deliverable. So if you're serious about consistently closing deals on your first call, building so much pain that when you drop the investment at the end, it feels like peanuts, then watch this entire video through, because I guarantee you, you're not following at least one of these elements where you're leaving money on the table. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So the first thing I need to preface is that this is a framework. It is not a script. It's not something you follow robotically, word for word. Like, this is the exact process you can use behind having a normal conversation. And it's the exact process that you're going to be able to follow to make sure when you get to the end of your sales calls, people aren't giving you objections. And even if they do, they're a lot easier to overcome because you've built so much leverage through your discovery that they have no choice but to move forward. Now, I've gone through a personal experience I want to share with you guys real quick, where I actually built my own agency from nothing to over 25K a month with my brother in MRR in less than 45 days. And the way we were able to do that was using this exact framework. And we were selling to roofers, which is like probably one of the most burnt niches, industries, whatever, that I've ever had to experience and sell to. And I've sold to pretty much every niche you can think of. The biggest issue I ran into in the very beginning is I came from way more of like a B2C background. So I was using a lot of these like touchy-feely questions that just did not land well whatsoever with higher sophisticated people who knew exactly what I was doing. They knew why I was asking questions. This framework is going to allow you to have a normal conversation and more of a consultative approach where they can actually see, hey, this guy's clearly the expert in what he's talking about. And clearly I'm leaving so much money on the table that it's just a no-brainer to move forward. And so something I want you guys to internalize, if this is the only thing that you take away from this video, is that the investment to fix their problems has to be less than what their problems are costing them. So for example, whatever you help fix, if someone's problem is costing them, let's say $100,000 a month because they're not fixing this issue, but your investment to fix it is $10K a month as a retainer, then clearly it makes way more logical sense to just pay the $10K a month to fix their problem than leave $100,000 a month on the table. And so fundamentally, when it comes to B2B conversations, you have to have enough urgency created through creating a specific cost that we're going to dive into, and ultimately a tangible and logical reasoning as to why their current process they're using to get the results they want is not going to work. In the very beginning, the most important part is that you are setting your frame. So I don't want you to have any small talk on like, hey, where are you calling out of? How's the weather going? Like, none of that. Just cut it all out and go straight to, you can ask one question of like, hey, how's the day going? Or how's this week treating you so far? And then just move right into the call. And so the way you set your frame is you're going to say, hey, my name is Calvin. I am the founder of, and for me, I am the head of sales for Agency Closers. So on this call, I'm going to ask you a ton of questions about your business, and I'll walk you through our packages and what we got going on over here. Does that sound good? Sweet. I make it sound very casual, and I let them know ahead of time I'm about to ask them a shit ton of questions. So then it helps people not be as resistant when you're like, hey, why are you asking so many fucking questions? Well, it's like, hey, I just told you, like, that's how this call is going to go. So I can understand your business, and then we can go over all the investment and packages at the very end so you have clarity on how that stuff works. Now, after you set your frame, they are basically agreeing you're putting up guardrails in the call where they're agreeing like this is exactly how the call is going to be structured. From there, you're going to go straight into your discovery questions. And the most important question, all I want you to take away from this entire video is literally ask these questions. I swear to God, your conversations will go so much more effectively, because once you know what someone is specifically trying to accomplish with their business and then what they're trying to solve for, what this looks like is like you can ask someone, hey, what are you looking to accomplish with the business in terms of revenue? And they're going to say, oh, I want to make 100K a month. Cool. How close are you to that now, by the way? And they're going to say, oh, I'm at 50K a month. It creates an instant gap in their mind. There's already immediate pain from the get-go. And then you're already immediately financially qualifying a little bit to see if they can even afford your retainer or services at the very end of the call. The very next question you're going to ask is, what do you need to get to that goal when it comes to the thing you solve? If you are a just marketing agency that helps local business owners, you're going to say, hey, what do you need help with when it comes to your marketing to actually get to 100K a month? And they're going to give you something very specific. They're going to say, oh, I need better leads or higher quality leads. And whatever someone wants or needs is fundamentally what they do not already have. And that is how you create pain. You speak, no matter how big a company is, they could make $100 a month or $1 billion a day. The best way to build pain, no matter who you're talking to, is you find out and speak to what they're missing. Meaning whatever they need is, again, what they do not have. And that is your way in to build pain. It's your North Star for the call. If you don't get this, you're literally just asking a bunch of random discovery questions to try and kind of figure out what their issue is. Whereas you can get not only just their goal, but you're also going to find out what their problem is. Because if someone needs better leads or they need more leads, what do they not already have? Obviously, more, like plenty of leads or better leads in general in terms of quality. After you get clear on that and you get the direction for the entire call, you're going to then dive into your offer and service questions. So this is just giving you a bunch of context on their business so that you can actually basically talk like a consultant. This is where you can demonstrate your expertise and start dropping language that your demographic uses. When I was talking to roofers, we would say stuff like, are you working with residential, commercial, or what type of services were they actually providing in terms of roofs? So then it made them feel like we were the experts of our space because we could talk their language too. And then we would say stuff like, hey, are you using asphalt roofs? Are you using clay roofs, like metal? What type of roofing are they actually doing most of the time? And again, that's just like another point to show them like, hey, we've been around the block, like we know how to speak their language. And when you can speak someone's language very clearly, they're going to naturally feel like, oh, this guy gets me. Once you get clear on what is their main service they offer. So for roofers, for example, they were focusing on full roof replacements. If you are working with HVAC businesses, maybe they're working on just maintenance or they're working on replacing HVAC units. So whatever the case is, you want to find out, hey, what's the main thing that they actually offer? And these are two main examples. This is for info product businesses or local business owners, depending on like who you're selling to. And you can obviously use this structure and format it to whatever industry that you're selling to and use these style of questions. So you're going to find out basically about their business, on what service they offer, what is their prices for those services, what is their just core offer that they're selling, do they have any upsells, downsells, and then you're just going to find out how are they getting clients right now. For info businesses, it's like, hey, are you running a VSL funnel, you run a webinar funnel, you're running a challenge funnel, are you doing just a straight to landing page to book a call, like how are you going about getting these clients? And then for local businesses, like, hey, you're running Facebook ads, or you just relying on referrals, do you do door-to-door? You just want to get complete context on what they're currently doing, and then that's when you're going to be able to dive into the marketing and metrics section. And the whole point of the marketing and metrics section is to essentially find out what is their current return on their efforts for marketing or whatever it is they're doing, and find out why they can't do and use what they're doing right now to get to their goal. Every single conversation is always going to revert back to, hey, what is your goal with your business and why can't you just get there with what you're doing now? And when you approach the conversation from that angle, they are going to lead you to whatever limitation that they're running into, which is exactly why they're on the call in the first place. This is going to help you consistently every single time pull out a very specific pain point. The easiest way to do this conversation is we're going to say, hey, what's working right now that's getting you guys clients? Oh, we're doing word of mouth and Facebook ads. Cool. What's not working right now that you guys are trying? Oh, I mean, we just wasted a bunch of money on Google and SEO, but we get like nothing from there. Why do you feel like that's not working? Yeah, we're just trying an agency. I don't know any better. Like, I don't know anything about it. We're paying them $400 a month. It's like, okay, yeah, they're probably some cheap VA service or whatever the case is. And then here you're going to ask them, what are you actually spending on those ads? Because the whole point is we want to find out what is their return on ad spend, which is what ROAS is. So if we know someone's return, the most logical thing to ask someone is, why not just do more of what already works? And most business owners that are of higher sophistication, which is a lot of people in B2B, they can at least think one step forward of, hey, if something is working, I would just put more money into that thing that's already working. That's why we say if their ROAS is good, we're just going to ask them, hey, why not just scale that? So if they're like, yeah, we're running Facebook ads, we have a 5x ROAS, like that's not bad. I guess why not just, I don't know, start spending way more, like double or triple what you're currently spending. Then they're going to say whatever limitation. So they're going to say, oh, like we can't. Then you're going to probe and clarify and ask things like, what do you mean? And can you give an example of that? Are going to be your two best friends on every single sales call, because it helps people elaborate on vagueness. When you're dealing with more A-type style prospects, they're just super vague, cut and dry. Hey, tell me everything, blah, blah, blah. Whenever you're asking, what do you mean, when they're vague, or can you give an example? It literally forces them to elaborate, to expand on their limitations. And so what this looks like is they're going to give you a very surface level limitation that's then going to help you pull out the symptoms of their problems, which then leads to the consequences of those symptoms. So for example, let's say I'm like, hey, how do you feel? And you're like, oh, I have a headache right now. I'm like, okay, what are your symptoms you're experiencing though? You're like, yeah, I have this shooting pain in my head. I have a bunch of brain fog. Then I'm like, okay, well, what's all that leading to? You're like, yeah, I literally can't focus at work. And because I can't focus at work, I can't help out my clients and I'm just making way less money. So it went from a very surface level, my head hurts, all the way to I can't make more money. That's what every conversation essentially stems into, is this surface level limitation was that your head hurts. And the symptoms of that limitation is that you have brain fog and you have a shooting pain in your head that's super annoying. And the consequences of those symptoms is that you can't make more money. Ultimately, you're leaving money on the table, which is very painful. And so that's how you can consistently go 3 layers deep on all of your sales calls. You don't need to go so deep into like, what do your kids think about the fact that, you have shitty leads? Like any of that is going to trigger an insane amount of resistance, or how do you feel that you have shitty leads? Like it's just a terrible question to ask because they're going to immediately get super resistant. So that's why you can just get very tangible pain points by asking, hey, what is the surface level limitation? What are the symptoms of that? And then what are the consequences of those symptoms? For a marketing agency, for marketing services, and again, apply this to whatever niche and industry you're in, but essentially someone could say, oh, we want better leads. The symptoms of that, you can say, hey, what do you mean better leads? Or can you example of the leads you're currently experiencing right now? Oh, we get a bunch of tire kickers, people who are just price shopping. They're not really serious about moving forward. You can say, okay, and what's that leading to? Like what happens after those conversations? Like how many are you converting? Whenever you're asking them leading questions, they're going to say, oh, well, like we're not profitable, or we can't scale, or because these leads are just tire kickers, they end up just looking for the cheapest price. And so we have a bunch of clients that are like super low level and annoying clients that barely pay us money. It's just like a whole headache in the business. As you can see, we started with a very surface level limitation of I need better leads. We asked for an example, which is like the symptoms of that limitation. They're tire kickers, they're not very serious. And then the consequences of those symptoms, which is, hey, what's that leading to? Is that they can't scale, they're stuck, and ultimately their sales guys are annoyed and they're likely to churn out because they're having to deal with such shitty leads. All of that is what creates pain and internal urgency for someone to make a change now and not later. After you get clear on that pain point, you're just going to dig straight into more numbers as well and say, hey, the whole point of this section in this metrics is we're trying to find out how much does this person actually make, to see what we can essentially pitch them as a service for a retainer. When we know how much they profit, which is what you're going to see in a second, we're going to know exactly how much we can charge them as a retainer. We're going to find out, hey, what's your average amount of leads per month? What's your AOV, LTV? And depending on who you're working with, this is like an e-com term for AOV, average order value. For local service businesses, you can say, what's your AJV? Like what's your average job value, or APV is what I like to use, average project value. You purposely say it with this abbreviation, so then it forces them to ask you, what does that mean? Because most people don't know what AJV is, or APV is, or LTV. Like a lot of people don't know these terms. And so it literally forces them to ask you, what does that even mean? And guess what? Now you're teaching your prospects something about marketing, which is going to do what? It's going to increase your authority and your status, because if someone is teaching you something, they are probably a higher authority in that case, especially on a sales call, which is extremely important. Eddie Maloof is like a master at this, which is just having an insane amount of aura and just authority throughout his sales calls. And it's doing little tiny stuff like this, basically saying terms and speaking so well that they feel like you know way more than they do about the problems they're experiencing, and you're essentially picking apart their business and dissecting it to poke holes in it, which is going to lead to them feeling like they have a lot of doubt around their current process and or strategy to get to their goals. So when you bundle doubt around how they're getting to their goals, along with limitations, symptoms, and consequences of those pain points, that is what creates a shit ton of urgency for someone to move, actually take action. These are more like info questions too. If you're like, hey, what's your max CPA you're willing to spend to acquire a customer, or like e-com? This is a really good question. So you can know like their basically break even cost per acquisition that they're okay with. And it's just good for like fulfillment things on that side. But this main point of this section is again to just financially qualify them, and allows you to essentially pace out any financial objections as early as possible, so you can either DQ them immediately or you can downsell them and just know what service you're going to offer them at the very end. Now this next part is crucial. This is like, in my opinion, where the sale is made aside from building pain in this section here. So the agency section is going over essentially past solutions that they've explored to solve all of their problems they just talked about. Someone has been dealing with a bunch of shitty leads for the last 6 months. That's what we want to find out, is how long have all those issues been going on for? And the reason we ask how long after you've built all this pain is because how long is an amplifier. If I'm like, hey, how was your day yesterday? Let's say hypothetically you worked at, I don't know, Walmart. You're like, yeah, it was terrible. You know, I was in the warehouse stacking a bunch of boxes. It was just super draining. I felt just mind numbing. And I'm like, dude, how long have you been doing all that for? And you're like, oh, the past decade. It's like, holy shit. Like this sounds way more painful because we're amplifying their pain. So after you build all this pain up during your discovery, you're going to ask, how long have all these issues been going on for? And then it perfectly segues into this next section of the agency section, because then you're going to find out how long they've been doing that. You're going to get some more context too on, hey, are you working with the agency right now? And they may say yes or no. And you're going to find out if they've worked with agencies in the past. And we're essentially trying to find out, what are they specifically looking for or not looking for in their next agency, so they don't end up getting the same results they got in the past, because most of people you might speak with to some extent have gotten burned before, especially the higher sophistication. They've bought a lot of different programs or mentorships and or worked with different companies and agencies where they've gotten bad results from working with them before. So they're a bit more skeptical, and you want to find out, hey, what can we do on our end that positions us as being different from their bad past experiences in the past? Or you're going to find out, have you spoken to anyone to actually fix this, inferring to other issues? So have you, over the last 6 months, have you spoken to anyone to actually fix the lead quality problem? They're going to say, obviously, yes or no. So if they say yes, you're going to ask, why didn't they end up moving forward? And they're going to give you specifics as to what was missing. And I always want you to get a very clear, tangible answer, because if they're not telling you what was missing, there's always something missing. Because I'm sure you guys have experienced people who are just like shopping around and looking around for everything. People don't shop around just to shop around. They are looking for something specifically, even if they don't know it already. And you're going to see how this segues here in a second. But once they say they did speak to someone, you're going to find out why they didn't move forward. And that's going to be your ammunition for exactly how to pitch them. Because whatever it is they didn't like about the other people they spoke with, just be different from that. And you're going to have a way better chance at closing the deal. Because if they're like, yeah, it was super unprofessional, they didn't seem like they actually knew what they were talking about, I saw they just passed me off to some like junior media buyer, like it didn't really seem something I want to just like put my whole business into and all my eggs in one basket, they're going to tell you what they actually care about. So then, you know, in your pitch, you're going to be like, okay, cool. I know I'm going to talk about how that other agency didn't really seem like they knew what they were talking about. And then I'm going to hammer on a ton of authority points as to why we're experts and why our team is totally different than everything they've seen from their past conversations. After they reply to that, you're always going to say, hey, once you find an agency that aligns with what you're looking for, given the investment doesn't break the bank or anything crazy, any reason, even logistically speaking, you wouldn't be able to move forward at that point. And the reason we ask this is to pre-handle any like logistical BS reasons. People could be like, oh yeah, we're doing like a renovation this week, so we had to wait a week to move forward. That we had to fix our CRM, like whatever bullshit logistical excuse they're giving you, you're going to be able to pre-handle this here. So then when you go over the investment, let's say they're like, oh yeah, we got to fix our CRM. It'd be like at least a week. Cool. In your pitch, whenever you're about to go over the investment, you want to say, hey, that's perfect. Because I know you mentioned earlier that you're doing that renovation right now. It's going to take about a week. That's perfect because our onboarding already takes a week to get everything set up, and even a couple of days after that, just for a little buffer room. And then by the time the renovation is done, that's perfect timing, because then we'll be able to get the ads all live and ready, and it'll be ready to rock from that point. And then just assuming the sale from there. So that way they can't just give you whatever random logistical excuse at the end. And again, this is where you're creating that level of leverage. Plus, if they give you the like shopping around objection at the end, this is going to build so much more leverage, because they're not necessarily shopping around just to shop around. They're really just looking for someone that aligns with what they're looking for, and the investment makes sense, where it's not going to throw them on the streets or anything crazy. We're going to use that at the end. For example, if you're just going to say, hey, does everything align with what we covered with what you're looking for? Like, yes, cool. Does the investment break the bank? Nope. Sweet. Well, given everything we talked about earlier, the fact that you're just looking for someone that is aligned with what you're looking for, if the investment doesn't break the bank, there's no reason we would move forward at that point. So given everything we covered is aligned with what you're looking for, that makes sense. The investment makes sense. Can you see how it makes sense to get started? And that's just the easiest line that you can use consistently to get people to move forward, because you're pre-handling it here. Now, if you didn't ask this and it comes up at the end, you don't have this leverage. You're having to go into like these crazy mystical reframes, but you can just ask this single question to help pre-handle it so much more effectively, as you can see. When someone says no, that they haven't spoken to anyone though, that's when you're going to say, why not? Because 6 months, 3 months, 2 months is a pretty good amount of time. And they're going to give you whatever excuse. Oh, like there's a billion people out there. Everyone promises the world and under delivers, or I was just busy, I didn't have the time, or I was traveling, blah, blah, blah. Any bullshit excuse they give you, you're just going to ask them. This is the most simple version. You're just going to say, hey, what shifted? Like what shifted more recently that made this more of a priority? I know like you mentioned the past 3 months, you just felt like you haven't had the time. So like what shifted more recently that made you feel like it's worth making the time and actually fixing this issue? Then they might go into a personal experience where they're like, yeah, we're looking at the numbers last week and we were like, man, this has really got to change. Like we've been bleeding money for too long. We just have to fix something. And that's when I saw your ad. And when they say something like that, you can then go into like, how much money do you feel like you left on the table over the last 3 months by not fixing this sooner? And when you do that, that is where you're going to be able to create logical pain that's going to outweigh the investment to fix their problem. The way I like to go into this is I like to say, hey, can you see how not making this more a priority sooner over the last 3 months is part of the reason that you're still experiencing all of these shitty leads? The reason that we do that is because we want to make sure we're on the same page before we ask them how much it's costing them by not fixing this issue. And the way you address that without someone getting like super offended, it's your intentions behind it. Because if I'm like, well, is it that you just didn't have the time or you just didn't make the time? You're going to be like, oh, what the hell, asshole? Like, you don't, anytime you're that direct with people, you're likely to trigger some type of resistance. But if you basically cushion your words a bit more and how you're saying it, people are far more receptive. So if I was to say like, hey, can I be direct with you? And I only say this because I genuinely care and I don't want to see you continue to fall into this trap. I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, can you see how part of the reason you're still having to deal with all these shitty leads, which has kept you stuck here, is because we just haven't prioritized this a lot sooner. Like we just haven't taken ownership over our lead quality to fix this over the last 3 months. And like, yeah, I can see that. Because over the last 3 months, because we haven't fixed this, what do you feel like that's cost you? Or how much do you feel like what's on the table because of that? And they're going to say something along the lines of, oh, maybe I don't know. Or they're going to give you a specific number. And if they're like, I don't know, then that's when you can say, well, if you did have way better lead quality, where do you feel like the business would be? And they're like, well, right now, we're at 100K a month that you got from earlier. And, we could definitely be at like 200K a month, like no doubt in my mind. Right now, because we haven't fixed this issue, we're leaving about 100K a month on the table. Can you see that? They're like, yeah. So then we're just going to say something along the lines of, well, is it worth continuing to push this off knowing how much money we're bleeding right now by not fixing this? And they're going to say, absolutely not. That's obviously why I'm here. Cool. Then you've just solidified exactly what they're looking for to know exactly how to pitch your services. You tied a cost to their problem so that it creates internal urgency to help them realize how much money they're bleeding on the table. And they just justified to you exactly why the reason they didn't move forward in the past is no longer a good reason to continue to just bleed money. This is what I'm talking about. You create so much leverage in your discovery that it makes it unreasonable for them to not move forward at the end of the call. And especially when you're getting things like, oh, this is just too expensive, like I talked about in the very beginning, you're literally going to be able to say, well, compared to what? Because what's more expensive in reality? Either leaving out 100K a month on the table or investing 10K to fix this issue. Like what's really more expensive in your mind? And the obvious logical answer is that it's costing me way way more by not fixing my problem than it is to fix it. That's exactly where you build this leverage in your calls. And let's say, just for example's sake, if you went through this entire framework and you weren't able to build pain anywhere at any point in your call, you can always ask, if this problem, whatever you talked about, was fixed, where would the business be? Whatever that gap is, that delta is how much it's costing them. So as long as that delta is greater than the investment to fix it, logically, they're going to buy if they have certainty that you can deliver on getting them those results. So the next section here is to go over their team, which is ultimately just to pre-handle the business partner objection. So you're going to find out, hey, do you have setters, closers? This is more for info. But if they have a local business, you can ask, hey, how many crews do you have? How many teams do you have in general? How do you guys go about sourcing materials? Anything, you just find out more contextual stuff about their business. And then really what we're trying to lead to is, hey, do you have any business equity partners? And if they say, yes, I do have partners, then obviously you want to be on the call. Ideally, you're triaging your prospects ahead of time to make sure that their business partners show up on the call as well if they have one. But this is where you're going to be able to pre-handle whether or not you should really pitch them. If they have a business partner, we need to clarify, are you able to make decisions on behalf of the company, or is your partner someone you'd absolutely need to consult with about these types of decisions? Because once you get clear on if they're able to make a decision or not and you're pre-handling it, that's going to tell you at the very end if it's going to be a logistical partner objection, meaning they literally can't make decisions because it's in their operating agreement, or it's a fear-based objection where they're like, oh, I got to go talk to my partner. Well, it's like, hey, they already told you earlier that they're able to make decisions on behalf of the company without needing to go consult their business partner. That's what pre-handles their partner objection. And then the timeline objection right here is what's going to be able to pre-handle I'm gonna wait a month or whatever to get started on this. This is the last thing you can do too, where you're like, hey, when are you planning to choose an agency or start on this project? Is this like I need to fix it yesterday, or in 6 months type of thing you're wanting to fix? And we frame it like this in a way where it's like, oh no, this is something we got to fix yesterday, instead of 6 months is such a far time out to fix their issue that the other option makes way more sense for them to choose. No, we got to fix this as soon as possible. All right, we want them to say that, so it just gives us more leverage and they literally say out loud their level of urgency to fix their problems. But now at the very end, we already got context on their goal. So we're going to find out, okay, so you're looking to make X and Y and Z amount of revenue. Now, how much profit are you looking to bring home? And in what time? In the next 6 months, 12 months, when are you looking to actually hit these goals? So when we find out they're looking to make $200K a month, he wants to profit $100K a month, and he wants to do it in the next 6 months. Cool. And just remind me again, right now, how close are we to that? Oh yeah, right now, we're pretty far off. We still need to double the business. We're only at 100K a month, and the profit right now, we're barely 40% of the way there. And we've been here for how long? You guys have been here for how long again? And they're gonna say, oh, for the past 2 years or 6 months, whatever the case is. So it just helps them come back to reality and contrast between, again, their goals and where they are now. So it just creates that last layer of pain, which sets us up perfectly for the pitch. And then we're just going to transition and say, oh, perfect. Well, we can totally help. And you're just going to go into a short story, ideally of how you fixed all their issues they're experiencing with a very similar client. And then I'm going to make a separate video on the actual pitch and objection, because it's a lot more in-depth conversation. But that is the entire discovery process that you guys need to implement. And as you can see, every section in here is in here for a reason, to help you pre-handle any objections from coming up at the very end. And if anything, you've created so much leverage through your discovery that even if they come up, you're able to easily handle them. I will be dropping the next video on this next week on exactly how to go over the pitch and objection handling, how to leverage all this pain we just built in discovery to ultimately close a deal and secure it. So I hope you guys found a ton of value from this. I'm going to leave a copy of this framework down below so you guys can literally implement this in your business today. Obviously, just customize everything for your own business, but shoot me a message in the comments of your results you've gotten from implementing this. We've gotten so many people that have doubled their pricing, increased their close rate, gotten so many more objectionless closes by using this. So I'd love to hear how much it's impacting your business too. And if you guys have any questions, as always, drop them down below and check out your own copy. Grab it down below in the description, and I will see you guys in the next one.